Hello, hello. So this morning I've ironed the painted snails right up on the exoplinth across from Marble Arch, both inherited and shun magenta aurora aluminium pasta sheets in a sort of zigzag fashion, which took me right back to the April of 1968 when I originally acquired the French hens. So the first record I'm going to be talking about today is this Mogwai Young Team, or as I like to say, Mogwai Young Team, as these guys were from Glasgow. They're a Glasgow band, but sometimes with different albums that you really enjoy, you can't explain exactly why it is you like it so much. You just do. These guys have a certain way about creating an atmosphere which is akin to sort of walking on a London Underground platform late at night with dimly lit lighting, and you're feeling a bit freaked out, but it's actually a really cool vibe. So that's what these guys do ever so well. But they're kind of like a post-rock band. They're one of the great innovators of post-rock, as well as dabbling their feet in sort of gothic rock as well. Like an example of that would be the second track, Like Herod. But if you want to get a taste for what the early Mogwai sound was like, check out the track Yes I Am a Long Way From Home. It's kind of comforting and apocalyptic at the same time, and sometimes that contrast is something that I just find very comforting. No idea why. That's the debut album from Mogwai, often considered to be their best album, actually, I'd say. They've done many great albums, but that is probably the Mogwai album if you want to get into these guys. So the next record we're going to talk about is 21 Pilots with a Blurry Face. This is an album from 2015. So these guys are sort of a juvenile pop band. They had really conquered the juvenile rock sound on their previous effort, which was called Vessel. They just nailed it down to a T on that record. And then they move forward into this album where they expand their horizons and cover many different types of genres. For me, what kind of sells this album on vinyl would be the artwork, because you have this nice design, but you've got a very kind of middle class sort of Marks and Spencer's feel to this, which includes the font that they used for the album. I mean, every time I look at that font, I just feel like I'm about to buy some trousers to go to a job interview, or perhaps buying some kind of indulgent chocolate fudge cake that's going to cost about £2.75. You know, and by that I don't mean a multi-pack, I mean literally just one individual one that's going to cost £2.75. So this album cover, if you're not in the know, this was a very, very fashionable and trendy album cover for its time, because the 9 circles which are featured all represent the different shirt designs which the band would sport around this time. All of these really, really trendy designs, very, very 2016, 2015. But this album cover is kind of a game changer in the record industry. Very innovative for its time. These guys were just outrageous. No one was doing anything like this in 2015. It really did send shockwaves right throughout the record industry, because essentially what you have here is an album cover which can be entirely customized by the owner depending on their personal tastes. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, what you do with this album cover is that you can pull out this sort of plexi sheet that reveals that there is another sheet made out of card. So what effectively this means is that either sheet can be turned around to flip the album cover so that an entirely unique combination can be created every single time you do it. So the album basically reflects your mood or how you're feeling on each day. This is just revolutionary. No one has ever done this. They really are kind of taking the format of the LP and just absolutely flipping it on its head. If there's an album to buy on LP, it's got to be this, you know. And the production is flawless as well. I mean, it could go toe to toe with, Dark Side of the Moon or OK Computer any day. Their record company, fueled by pot noodles, and their accountants were on the BBC News, because allegedly this album cover cost the record company £70 million in finances, because to produce an LP sleeve like this cost a lot of money, and this record sold in the millions, so it doesn't exactly take Sherlock Holmes to figure that one out. So in terms of content, this album sort of boasts a very wide selection of different kinds of genres. We have revisions of the early 2010s indie hipster ukulele pop movement with tracks like We Don't Believe What's on TV and The Judge, which has got a hook which would go in a McDonald's advert any day. We have elements of hardcore trap. We have classic Jamaican roots reggae on some of the tracks, such as the refrain on the track Lane Boy. I think these guys actually did spend some time in Jamaica just kind of soaking up the culture and just observing, very much in the same way that Charles Darwin went on his voyage for 5 years, kind of just going to all these different places to, as almost like a research project, because they really had to do it in preparation for this absolute masterpiece of an album. We've also got elements of emo rock, Christian rock, country and western, rockabilly. Really, just it goes everywhere.
There's something about fitting 5 chords into a progression that really makes me excited.
In a word, this album is eclectic, and this is all thanks to the genius of Tyler the Creator, the lead singer and songwriter of 21 Pilots. He's a wordsmith. You've really got to go back to almost the 60s with Bob Dylan to find a lyricist as bold and adventurous and genius as this. A real bohemian. I'm just going to read some of the lyrics here. It's wanted to be a better brother, better son, wanted to be a better adversary to the evil I have done. I have gone to a show, to the one I love, but deny, yo! I think this could rival Bob Dylan. I don't think there's ever been another lyricist who quite comes as close to Dylan, apart from Tyler Joseph. Just genius.
Sometimes your sarcasm hurts.
So why is this record so eclectic? Well, I think it's because they were bored. This is the work of 2 bored musical geniuses. They had conquered the album-making landscape and succeeded in making masterpiece after masterpiece. And I truly believe that they were just bored, much like Stanley Kubrick when he made The Shining.
And it starts in a minor. And I love starting things in a minor because it's sad and I like to be sad.
Come on, son, get a bloody grip of yourself.
So next up we have Thriller by Michael Jackson, or as I like to say, Thriller. I was listening to this during the week and I noticed something very, very strange about this. This is my French pressing of the album, and I put it on for the first time, and to say the pressing is a bit weird would be a bit of an understatement. This has something which I've never experienced with any record before, pretty much. Pretty much all the songs sound normal as they do on every other version of the album until you get to the track Human Nature, and the vocals are particularly strange. They are just so peculiar. I can't describe this. I've had weird pressings in the past. I've had, things where the vocals sound a bit strange, but this is something else. I don't normally do needle drops on this channel because I'm petrified of copyright strikes, but I think I have to share this because this is just so odd. What the fuck is going on? If someone could tell me what is going on here, I'd really appreciate it, because I am so confused. Like, what has happened? Have I accidentally accumulated some extremely rare pressing or something? Is someone fucking with me? I just don't know. Next up, we have an LP by the band Muse with their album Drones from 2015. So, yeah, I was listening to this album this week, and I noticed that the lyrics on this album are a little bit naff compared to some of their other albums, but basically what they wanted to do with this album is that they wanted to get back to a more raw, heavy rock, hard rock sound. The albums that came before this one, 3 or 4 or 5 albums before this one, had experimented with a lot of electronics and synthesizers and arpeggios, orchestras, quartets, choirs. This album, they just wanted to go back to bare bones basics. They wanted to get back to Origin of Symmetry, a very early album of theirs, which has a really raw, punky, progressive sound. So they enlisted the AC/DC producer Robert Mutt Lang to produce it. Unfortunately, it does have quite a rocky, hard sound, but unfortunately it also suffers from XFM-itis, which is a condition which I like to describe as sounding like American Idiot by Green Day. It's got that ultra-produced commercial snare drum sound. It just sounds like something that could be played on commercial radio, albeit indie rock commercial radio. It's not true hard rock. It's not like, it hasn't got a really rough sound. My brother is a huge Muse fan, and he likes this album, but he hates the production on it. And he said himself, you get a better sound from just shoving a microphone in the room and just listening to the band play super raw. It's got a very, very produced sound to it, which is quite ironic as they were going for a very raw sound. My favourite song on this album is probably The Handler, and this is a song about holding your own member, which is represented on the album cover, which also ironically describes what the production of this album is like. Next LP I've been listening to is The Art Angels by Grimes. not to be confused with archangels, but this is actual physical angels made out of art, and it's all produced by Grimes, the musician Grimes. I think her real name is Claire, but this is her period when she was actually making good music. She's unfortunately fallen off a little bit as of late. She's gone down Kanye West Avenue. Okay, fair enough, nowhere near as bad as Kanye West, but still not great. But yeah, with these angels, she creates electro pop in a very arty fashion, and really does bring the angels to light, if you can imagine such a wild thing. But you can really sort of delve yourself into these creations that she has manifested, because you get a gatefold. I mean, there's some weird imagery going on here. I mean, it's all a little bit trippy and a bit strange, but it's all kind of coming from her consciousness, which is nice, because a lot of this industry stuff is very intervened with. You don't get the true intentions from the artists. But one thing that you do get with this LP, which I do think is a very nice touch, is that she does provide about 10 different artwork sheets. And I'm just having a look through these sheets right now. I'll put up a video so that you can really have a look at these for yourself. They're double-sided as well. But these remind me of a lot of those sort of anime books that you can buy, those graphic novels, which I love so very much. Junji Ito and all that sort of stuff. Oh, quite like this one. This one's very odd. When you buy this, it is quite a special product, because not only are you buying an LP full of catchy tunes, but you're also buying an art gallery, basically, which you can... Much like the 21 Pilots album, you can kind of do whatever you want with this. You can put them up on your wall using little pieces of blue tack, or perhaps you could hang them up on the washing line and share it with all your neighbours, but be careful that it's not going to get rained on. For some reason, when I bought this, they gave me this really old school thing to put the record in. I don't know why that is. That looks like it's from the bloody 60s or something. Yeah, Grimes. Not to be confused with Frank Grimes. But there is a dark curse with this vinyl LP. It doesn't include Reality. One of my favourite songs on this album is a track called Reality. I think it's a near flawless synth pop tune. Not on the album. Technically, it's a bonus track when you listen to it on Spotify, which I did not realise. So that's bloody disappointing. And there is a track on here called Scream, which I really don't rate. It's got this really cringy rapping on it. Never mind. Next up we have Disco Erotica. I don't know about you, but I feel erotic when I listen to pretty much any kind of disco, especially the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. I think John Travolta's sexy. It's probably my favourite kind of sexy. Next up we have Fortet with his album Pause. This was released in 2001. We really are treated to quite a fine selection of folktronica and plunderphonic sounds on this LP. This is not an electronic record which is produced in the way that you might expect a modern electronic record to be produced. I mean, essentially this was created with a desktop computer on a desk, a hi-fi system for sound and monitoring, and basically just a giant pile of records. This guy just samples everything and anything from vinyl records, chops up the samples into oblivion, and just makes his own tunes. And this record provides quite an interesting experience. It almost sounds like you're sort of waiting around in a hospital. When you've kind of gone to the hospital for something that isn't that serious and they keep you waiting for hours. That's what this record feels like. Now that might sound like a negative experience, but it's a pretty positive one. The opening track to this album, Glue of the World, was used in an episode of House with Hugh Laurie. And not surprised that they used that track, because it really did fit the scene well. Minimal record as well. I'm pretty sure for the inner sleeve he just photographed his mother's tablecloth. I've also been spinning quite a fine selection of Now That's What I Call Music LPs. It's always nice to pick up these LPs in charity shops because, well, at least, you might be getting some really bad songs, but at least for sure that you're getting at least 3 or 4 good songs. And they're nice LPs to explore as a kind of time capsule for the time that they came out, So, for example, this is 1988, and you can listen to this and just picture yourself sort of in a smoky cafe with all the old ladies smoking their cigarettes. This is another time, obviously when you could smoke indoors. And you can just close your eyes and picture yourself in this cafe drinking a coffee and smoking a cigarette with the jukebox jukebox playing in the background and you're hearing the latest chart entries, it really does. It takes you back to another time, another place. So on this one we've got Belinda Carlisle, Wet Wet Wet, Elton John, Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight 88 mix. Can't remember even what that one sounds like. We've got a bit of Iron Maiden on here. Can I Play with Madness? Never thought I'd see Iron Maiden on a now. Must have been one of their more commercial tunes. The side I was listening to was Record 2 Side 2, which begins with the absolutely marvellous theme from S Express. Then we also get Push It by Salt and Pepper. We get The Payback mix by James Brown. Bananarama on there as well. Also Doctor in the TARDIS, which is the Time Lords, aka the KLF, mixing up Gary Glitter. It's a bit of a shame that it's Gary Glitter, but there you go. So yeah, this is when Nows were really creative with their album covers. From about, I don't know, now 30 onwards, they basically just did the same album cover over and over again with the big giant numbers on the page and then slightly mix up of the background, with a slightly different theme. But back in the day, they really were creative with these album covers. For example, for this one, it took so long to photograph, because this is now 12, they tiled a floor of the swimming pool with, a big giant 12, obviously, but they printed the Now logo onto 3 separate coloured balls, because that was the Now logo at the time, and it took so long to photograph to get those balls to sort of stay in the right position. This really was a painstaking, time-consuming process. Also got Now 11. This was probably a bit of a simpler one to photograph. There's a match cut in The Simpsons which really reminds me of this album cover from the episode Simpson and Delilah. But this one starts off with I Should Be So Lucky by Kylie Minogue. Also got Always On My Mind by the Pet Shop Boys. Love them. Suede Head by Morrissey. Candle in the Wind Live by Elton John. Not sure how that got into the charts. Bit of Sinead O'Connor. Bomb the Bass. I'm always quite a big admirer of the old-fashioned logo, which combines the Virgin and EMI and Polygram logos, because this was a collaboration between all those labels. Now was like all 3 in one. Next up we have Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. Personally, I prefer Circular Bells by Barry Newfield, but this one's still cool. Next up we have the 1st of June 1974. This is a very remarkable, strange LP in the sort of legacy of rock and roll, because this was a live album. This was a live concert by Kevin Ayres at the Rainbow Theatre in London, but he invited along quite a few of his famous, classy West End chummies from the record industry. So he invited Eno there. You've got Nico and John Cale, but we've also got Mike Oldfield on this LP and a bunch of other guys and gals who I don't know the names of. But one thing that makes this album cover very remarkable is that Kevin Ayres had an affair with John Cale's wife, and this photograph was taken just after. So you can see him kind of staring daggers at him as if he, about to put his hands around his neck. And then he looks so guilty, it's unbelievable. And then you've also got Nico, who looks, half dead. Please, help us! And you got Eno, who just looks a bit smug. This album really did cement itself in the history of rock music for all the wrong reasons. Next up we have Teaser in the Firecat by Cat Stevens. A lot of people know and love and cherish Tea for the Tillerman. The album released just before this. Well, this was released around the same time, and it's basically just as good, but nowhere near as well known. Just as much of a classic album. Cat Stevens has got this wonderful, enriching voice full of wisdom and charm and power, strength, cleanliness and godliness, and he's not even related to Kevin Godley. But I tell you what, he does have quite a charming, sort of sexy look about him. I mean, look at those eyes. Those dreamy eyes. Very seductive, and they pierce right into the soul. Next up, we have John Lennon with Mind Games. To be honest, this feels like a bit of a poor man's Plastic Ono band. There aren't quite as many songs which I enjoy, but I did enjoy probably the first 5 tracks on here, very much so. But this is a bit of a butchering of a classic album cover. I mean, as you can see, it's a bit of a remix of the original album cover in this sort of kaleidoscopic remix, I suppose. This is a Music for Pleasure release, so a sort of budget release. Keeping with a Beatles theme, we have a collection of oldies. This was released sometime after Revolver, because the Beatles had put out an album for the Christmas buying market every single year, and then of course when they made Revolver, they were in their true creative zone, and they couldn't just bang out 2 albums in 1 year. So the record company decided to just scrape up all the hits and release that instead, and none of the Beatles approved of this. But you do get one original track, Bad Boy, which is also on the Past Masters compilation. Next up, been spinning a bit of Dave Brubeck's greatest hits. This is a great one to listen to in the morning when we're squeezing our oranges and having our morning coffee. Mark Kermode appears on the album cover. He represents Dave Brubeck, and this is just super relaxing, beautiful music. What can you say? Also been spinning a bit of ABBA with Super Trooper. The Winner Takes It All is the one for me from this LP. I don't know how I ended up with it, but this is a Canadian copy. Not sure how I got that, but it's a copy from Canada with the maple leaf down there at the bottom, as you can see. Released on Atlantic. I've never known ABBA to be on Atlantic. Always thought of them as more of an epic band. Also been listening to a bit of Genesis with We Can't Dance. Phil Collins really cheeses it up on this album with his super American vocals. We can't dance. You know, he sounds like he's about to put ketchup on a hot dog wearing a cowboy outfit. But yeah, I mean, let's face it, this is their Maroon 5 period, isn't it? You know.
Who's got my Maroon 5 CD? It's gone missing.
Proper commercial, proper slick, you know. They really are a full-on pop band at this point, you know, very far from their progressive roots. Also been spinning a bit of 10cc with the original Best Of album. This album came about through very unfortunate circumstances. I think these guys were scheduled to release an album a year, you know, so every single year they had like Deceptive Bends and then Bloody Tourist, and then I suppose there was meant to be another album, but one of the band members got involved with a car crash and could not record the album, so yeah, the record company put out a Best Of instead. But yeah, I do quite like the collage on the album cover. I think it combines quite a few different styles and textures, and quite like the little comic book style thing at the top. Next up we have the Cabbage Patch Kids. This is a best of for the Cabbage Patch Kids. These guys had quite a few hits back in the day. They released quite a few singles in Germany, which got on the gay club scene circuit quite a bit, and they were sort of played very loudly. Yeah, I do remember Run Run Run, the cover of the Velvet Underground, and I think they pull it off. They do it in sort of a hardcore punk style, which is kind of calling back to the sort of proto-punk vibes of the Velvets. Yeah, these guys pull it off. A bit of a cult band, really, the Cabbage Patch Kids, you know. Also been greasing it up with the Grease soundtrack. I found this in a charity shop. I think this is probably quite a very common one to find in charity shops, but never in great condition. But this was in fine condition, which is not bad. Also been listening to some Air. This is 10,000 Hertz Legend, which is a really strange sophomore album for Air. Everybody knows and everybody loves Moon Safari. You know, it was huge at the time and it's still huge now. Classic album. But they released this album as their second album, and to be honest, it couldn't be further apart from the original. They totally changed their style. And a lot of fans do really like this album. I personally like most of it, but I think the opening track, Electronic Performers, is highly indulgent. But they do follow it up with How Does It Make You Feel, which is a gorgeous track. Also, last but not least, we have New Atlantis with Wavemaker, some really nice electronic-y stuff from the 70s. A couple of naked dudes on the back with moustaches in a very porn star-esque fashion. I really like this LP. It's got some really good electronic-y stuff on Polydor. So that was it. I shall see you very, very soon. Goodbye.